So, welcome to another edition of Influence, the global podcast. And I have to say, I've interviewed some amazing people on my show over the last 2 or 3 years, but I am truly, truly excited to have Will on the show today. And that's not just because you're there, Will, but because I got to see you speak at the Cannes Lions Festival. And you really did leave a mark on me about your subject matter, which I think is very poignant and very, very interesting. So Will is an entrepreneur. He is a multi-award-winning restaurateur, global speaker, so many other amazing things. But lovely to see you, Will.
Yeah, it's likewise. Thank you for having me on. It's good to see you again, albeit virtually, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, that's good. So, you've written a book called Unreasonable Hospitality, and I think it'd be really interesting to uncover that and unpick that a little bit more. Why did you write the book?
And I wrote the book for a couple of different reasons, honestly. I've been thinking about writing a book for some time. Um, Although, if I'm being very honest, the workload of running a restaurant company did not necessarily afford me the time to sit down and do it.
Mm.
Um, Nor did I necessarily think I had enough to share, right? I think there's unfortunately a few too many books out there that probably didn't need to be written.
For sure.
I question whether or not my book would fall into that category. One of my close friends is a guy named Simon Sinek. He wrote the book Start With Why, one of the great
Mm.
writers and thinkers. And
Amazing book.
I was at a conference he did, and I was speaking at it. And afterwards, he and his publisher came up to me and said, "You need to write a book." So that alleviated my fear that maybe I didn't have anything to say, because those are two of the people that I have the most respect for. And so they gave me the confidence, but I still didn't have the time. Then at the end of 2019, I sold my company. Um, and then COVID started. And suddenly I found myself with time and also a selfish need. I think many people can attest to going through transitions in life where you've built something, you invested so much of yourself into building it, and you sell it, and now you have this opportunity for a second chapter or a second mountain.
Mm.
One of the things my dad has always said to me is one of the best ways to learn is to teach. And as I began the process of thinking about my second chapter, I wanted to take the time to relive the one that had just ended and compel myself to, as best I could, put language to all the lessons I'd learned along the way, such that I would be better at not only embodying those lessons, but paying them forward to all the people I'd work with in the years to follow. And so, in one sense, writing the book was selfish, right? An opportunity for catharsis, closure, and also articulation, or better put, putting intention to intuition for me. And then, in the other sense, emboldened by Simon's belief in me, this desire to share everything I'd learned and pay it forward,
Mm.
not just to people that do what I do, not just to restaurant people, but perhaps even more importantly, to so many people in different businesses. Because, well, one of the underlying principles, the thesis of the book is that we need to be more intentional, we need to be more creative in pursuit of relationships, but perhaps even more broadly, that it doesn't matter what business you're in, you can make the choice to be in the hospitality industry.
Mm.
And not only do I think that's a transformational choice for people across disciplines to begin making, but it feels like in the moment we are all sharing in our collective experience, more people making that choice right now would, in I think, a pretty significant way make the world a better place.
Potentially, I think more than ever now. I mean, COVID really did rattle the cage, didn't it, for people? And that human level of connection, I remember people that had been locked up almost for a certain period of time. When they came out, they were almost hugging people to say, I hadn't realized how important you were and these relationships were until I didn't have it.
For sure.
And
Well, whether it was COVID and our collective kind of re-understanding of our need for human connection, whether that just happened to coincide with the ever-increasing digital transformation that's happening in the world and how much our phones have replaced human interaction, and AI is now supercharging that in whole new ways, or whether it's that we just find ourselves generally in a place where we are seemingly hardwired to look across the table at people and focus on why we're different as opposed to why we are likely in at least some ways the same.
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, I'm just going to draw on that because when you came onto the stage at Cannes, unlike most people that just walk on, you had a table with a bottle of wine and two glasses along with your host. And it was almost as though we're all looking as if to say, why the table? And of course, it all became apparent later on in the discussion. So, do you want to just enlighten people as to why you think the table plays a really important part in the relationship of life?
Yeah, and I have to give credit to Mimi Turner, who was the person I was on stage with from LinkedIn, um, who's heard me talk about the power of the table so many times and said, "Let's put a table on stage." I said, "Wait,
She came up with the idea. Oh, right.
that was her idea," and I was honestly thrown by it a little bit because I always try to avoid things that feel cheesy or contrived when you're trying to present ideas that are so genuine and authentic to you. But her point, which I came to really believe was true, was sometimes the best way to express something is to show it alongside talking about it. And the table, I'm in the restaurant business. I have been my entire life anyway. And I just believe in the sacredness of the table. I think that as the world evolves, there are fewer and fewer places where people are either invited or inclined to very genuinely connect with one another. And the table, at least when approached with the right set of principles, is one of those places. It's where, and I've seen this with my own eyes, married couples that have been together for a long time and raised kids and perhaps have drifted a bit further and further apart from one another, find themselves over the course of food and wine. But honestly, those are just ingredients. That's not the point. Slowing down for long enough to speed up the connection that exists between them. I've seen it. I mean, when you walk into a restaurant, what is so beautiful to me about a great restaurant that is with intention creating the conditions for connection, a couple things happen. One, if you and I were to go to one of those restaurants, we should be closer at the end of the meal than we were going into it, even if just the tiniest bit. But also, the beauty of a restaurant is that in one room is a collection of so many of life's experiences happening concurrently. And all of those are happening at the table. I think that many, many people and many, many businesses could take lessons from the dining table and apply them to the boardroom table.
100%. 100%. And I love that. It's just such an emotional experience. And also you've got the attention for a few hours. And the sad fact I find though, that even with the table, still sometimes they're distracted by phones and things like that. And it's such a shame when I mean, for me, when I go to a restaurant, I love the experience of choosing something on the menu and waiting for what's going to come. Having a good relationship with the waitress makes such a difference to that experience. Looking at the theme of the way the restaurant has been presented and laid out, in some cases going and choosing your fish that you might have for that evening, all of those types of things. So I want to just speak now about when you were running 11 Madison Park. One of the things that you hired there were the Dreamweavers, and I think it was a really fascinating job title that you gave people, where it wasn't just about serving food. It was about creating memorable experiences. So do you want to just allude a bit more on some of the things that you did?
Yeah, so at a certain point in our evolution, listen, I don't think you become the best restaurant in the world just by being excellent. You become the best restaurant in the world by being impactful.
Mm.
And when I looked at the restaurants that had made significant impact before us, it was either El Bulli in Spain or Noma in Copenhagen, these restaurants that were persistent, relentless, unreasonable in pursuit of the product they were serving and willing to do whatever it took to innovate that product and move it forward. El Bulli with molecular gastronomy, Noma with foraging and fermentation. And each one of these restaurants invested in whatever resources were necessary in order to bring their most fully realized ideas to life. I knew early in our evolution that I wanted our impact not to be centered around being unreasonable about the product, but to have them centered around being unreasonable in pursuit of people. And so our entire thing was around hospitality. And if that's a choice you make, you need to also be willing to invest in the resources to do it at a level beyond which it's been done before. And so the breakthrough moment for me, and we talked about this right before we started right before we press record, and this has become a famous story. But I was in the dining room one day on a busier than normal lunch service, helping the servers, and I was clearing plates from a table of four. They were foodies on vacation to New York just to eat at nice restaurants. And they were actually headed to the airport to head back home immediately after their lunch. And I overheard them talking while I was clearing their plates. They were going on about the great restaurants they'd been to: Per Se, Le Bernardin, Danielle, Momofuku, now at Madison Park. But then one woman jumped in and said, "Yeah, but you know what we didn't have? We didn't have a New York hot dog." And it was like one of those light bulb moments. And so I walked calmly into the kitchen, dropped off the plates, ran outside, grabbed a hot dog, ran back inside. Then came inevitably the harder part, which was convincing the chef to serve the hot dog in our fancy restaurant. I convinced him to, and we cut the hot dog up into four perfect pieces and added a little swish of ketchup and mustard and a perfect cannelle of sauerkraut and relish to each plate. And before their final savory course, which I always like to joke at the time was a honey lavender glazed Muscovy duck that had been dry aged for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I brought in what we in New York call a dirty water dog, and they freaked out. Athletes always go to the tapes and they've had a bad game to see what they did wrong such that they can fix that thing. None of us often enough go to the tapes when we've had a good game to see what we did right so that we can keep on doing that thing. I believe that's how you put intention to intuition. I believe that's how you take moments of organic brilliance and grab onto them and hold on to them and make them a part of the fabric of your organization. Honestly, Gordon, it breaks my heart to think about how many beautiful moments of innovation just drifted away because no one had the wherewithal to see their brilliance when they happened and to systemize them to ensure that they'd continue happening. And I mean, really, it was three things. And one, I needed to be present, right? To actually be with the people I was serving such that I could pick up on the little cues. Two, I needed to take what I did seriously. Obviously, you don't become a 3 Michelin star restaurant if you don't take the work seriously, but we needed to stop taking ourselves so seriously. They were talking about marketing, which is a half step away from brand. I think brands are a powerful thing. They're your bumper sticker to the world, but the moment your brand starts telling you what you are and are not allowed to do for others in an effort to make them happy, you've let the brand become more powerful than it should be. And three, this idea that if hospitality is about making people feel seen, the best way to do that is not to treat them like a commodity, but a unique individual. Because in unreasonable hospitality, one size fits one. And so with the hot dog as our true north, and these three things as the roadmap, I sat with my entire team and encouraged them to start coming up with their own hot dog gestures. Go into the dining room, be present, don't take yourselves too seriously. Find one size fits one things to, well, give the people we're serving the kind of story that will allow them to relive this experience for the rest of their lives. Now, I think this happens with some frequency, that a great leader gives their team permission to do something, but doesn't back that up with the resources that allow the team to do it consistently, that allows the team to deploy things in a way that's not so overly burdensome that they don't actually follow through and do it. And there is not a restaurant on earth that has a bench in the back with people sitting idly by in the middle of dinner service to go run errands. So if you want to do this at scale, you need to set yourself up accordingly to do it. And so we hired a position on the team. We called them Dreamweavers. And they were there just to help everyone else on the team bring their ideas to life.
I love it.
And once we had that position, we were able to do the coolest thing. One time a guest came in, and we had these fancy champagne carts that we'd roll around with bottles of Dom Perignon and Krug and, grower champagnes. And we learned that a guy was there with his dad, and his dad was much more Budweiser steak and potatoes guy than tasting menu and champagne. And so the Dreamweavers ran out to a local bodega and bought every single type of Budweiser they could, every single bottle, and took the champagne out, made that the Budweiser cart, and pushed that up to the guy's table.
Wow.
When you're a Budweiser steak and potatoes guy going to a fancy tasting menu restaurant, you feel intimidated. If you feel intimidated, your guard is up. If your guard is up, you can't connect in the way that we want to be able to connect with people in order for them to feel the experience in the way that we want it to be felt. The moment they feel seen and comforted, and the sense of belonging that comes from pushing a Budweiser cart up, those guards come down, and now we can actually succeed in what we're trying to accomplish. We did things like that constantly.
And there were more. I mean, the other one that really got me was the dad that had was on from business, and he'd forgotten something to buy a present for his little boy. And tell us that story, because again, that's
it was another table where there was a business guy there, and he was on his way to the airport to take the red eye home after dinner. And we overheard him like have that moment where, the moment where you realize you've forgotten something. He's like, oh no, I had one responsibility. I was meant to get a little stuffed teddy bear with the I Heart NY t-shirt for my kid, and I forgot. Easy. Dreamweavers ran up the street, bought one. On his way out, they gave it to him. Grown-ass businessman started crying on his way out of the door.
Wow.
But I mean, we did thousands of these things. We'd buy sleds for people who we just learned had never seen real snow. We reenacted people's weddings. We built miniature trains on tables for people that we knew loved Christmas and were experiencing their first one away from their family. We recreated beaches in our private dining room for people whose vacations were canceled due to inclement weather. And here's the thing. It was a win-win-win. It was great for the guest. Obviously, we were giving them stories to help them relive that experience. People collect experiences these days more than they collect things.
They do.
If you want to remain in someone's consciousness, the best way to do that is to give them a story about the experience that helps them relive the experience and ultimately make it an experience worth collecting. Two, it was great for our bottom line because we spent money on this stuff. Obviously, we hired the positions, we bought teddy bears and sleds, but every dollar we spent was much more impactful than any dollar we ever spent on traditional marketing, because then you had a literal army out there sharing these stories and encouraging people to want to come see it for themselves. But perhaps most importantly, it was great for our team because for the first time, we were no longer just serving plates of food that someone else had created. We were imbuing the experience with our own creativity. We were no longer salespeople. We were product designers. And I have yet to meet a single individual that won't give more of themselves to help something succeed than once they feel a genuine hand in helping to determine what that thing is. It just made work more fun.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I could talk to you for ages about this because there's probably loads and loads of case studies. But I think what really cements this for me is being able to relate this hospitality message to other businesses and look after your staff, look after your customers in the way that you would like to be treated. And if you go to this relentless relentless way in terms of pursuit of excellence and making people feel part of the experience overall, the results will speak for themselves, won't they? Because people will feel valued, they'll feel part of it. I bet bearing in mind the hospitality industry is famous for having a high turnover of staff. I bet your retention was extremely high, wasn't it?
We had very high retention because, I mean, listen, everyone's suffering with turnover right now, right? Or retention or recruiting issues. And people in most industries are doing the same things. They're trying to pay people more, create more balance between work and life, all of which are important, but in my view, insufficient. Um, because it's treating the symptoms and not the underlying illness, which is that we need to restore a sense of purpose to people's work. And that comes through, well, giving people agency and empowerment. And it also comes through giving our people the gift of making other people happy, reminding them that they can have positive impact every day when they walk into work. I don't believe there's anything more energizing than seeing the look on someone else's face when they receive a gift you are responsible for giving them. If we can all give the people on our team the gift of being able to give other people gifts, it very quickly becomes one of the most beautiful addictions.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. Goodness me. You are mesmerizing to listen to and watch, I have to say. I'm normally famous for jumping in, but I just can listen to this all day long, which is great. Now, what's really good about your wider business is that you've now got a conference which has been running for so many years. What's next on the future of Will Guidara?
So, we're working on a bunch of different stuff. We will open restaurants again in the future or a restaurant, whatever, when it feels right. It has not yet felt right. But we have an agency that I started called Thank You, and we work with big companies outside of restaurants in an effort to help them make that decision to be in the hospitality industry. We don't take on very many clients. We do deep dives with people, either to help them with gathering and gifting strategy or to do like pretty intense interrogations around experience design. We serve basically as an on-call think tank that helps companies figure out the most creative and meaningful ways to invest in their relationship capital accounts. And the premise of it all is there are so many companies out there who are unreasonable in pursuit of making the best product possible. And we are there to say it's time to be just as unreasonable in pursuit of how you make all of your stakeholders feel. And I believe the return on that investment is, well, hard to calculate. It's not the kind of investment that has like, how many social media impressions did we get or whatever, right? It's a bit harder to fully calculate. That doesn't mean that it's not there. In fact, I believe it's so vast. The people that we've worked with, anyway, have proved this to be true, that it's almost incalculable.
I bet. I just want to leave you with one question, which I think is an important one because you are a very inspirational and shrewd individual. But I want to know who has influenced you.
I mean, so many people, but without question, and this is not like a trite answer, my dad.
Oh, wow.
And anyone who reads the book will see the extent to which his name probably should have also been on the front as one of the authors, based on the frequency with which I quote him and pay forward all the lessons that he taught me. I quote my dad constantly, to the point that if he didn't have such good things to quote, people would be probably annoyed. But he's taught me about innovation and creativity, discipline and integrity, and done it all in an extraordinarily intentional way. And I am who I am because of the fact that I was lucky enough to be born as his son.
Will Guidara, thank you so much for joining us on the Influence Global podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.